Welcome. My name is Lydia, and I'm so glad you've joined us here at SCC's online campus. We have an incredible message for you today, so let's join in.
There was a moment a few years ago, one of my really good friends, Matt, he lives in San Antonio. He sent me a message. He said, Nathan, I want to fly you down to Texas. Just come down for the week. It was like 5 days, maybe 6 days. He's like, I'm going to fly you down. Let me know what days work for you. And you just come down and we're going to hang out. I hadn't seen Matt in years. Real good friend. He was in my wedding. Just real cool guy. And so we get down to Texas, and it's like the middle of summer. And if you've never been to San Antonio in the middle of summer, it's like hell hath opened up her womb. It is frighteningly hot. And so we're out there, and Matt is an avid golfer, and he's like, hey, let's go play golf. And I'm like, are you sure? I don't know that there's like air conditioning outside there. But he's like, no, let's do this. So we go out, and I'm like, well, if I'm gonna go golfing, I have to look the part. So I look like a skinny John Daly. I am just decked out head to toe in plaid. I've got my knickers on. I've got my little hat with like the little furry things, whatever. And I'm looking the part. Now, let me just give you a heads up. I am awful at golf. If we're playing a scramble, you do not want me on your team. It's just, I keep score. The last time I played golf, I kept score by how many golf balls I lost. I scored a 15. I'm like hunting in people's yards for like golf balls that went awry. And I'm like, oh, I think I can still use that one. And so we're out there, and I'm playing terribly, but I'm having a good time because I look the part, and I'm like, all right, let's do this. And so Matt got me, he rented me a set of clubs, and I'm out there, and I'm like, I took golf as a PE elective in college. I had no business doing it, but I did it. So I know the mechanics of it. I'm just awful. And so I'm out there, and I don't know what it is. I'm at the tee box, and I like got this backswing. I'm like, we look good. And boom, and I hit this ball like I was Tiger Woods. It had that, golfers, it had that sound, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going pro, right? And I'm in my follow through, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, why? Yes, Lord, yes, amen. And I see out of my peripheral, while I'm trying to look at the ball, there's something moving over here. And it's like this, it's like there's this tall grass. I don't know I'm not a plantologist or whatever it is, like tall grass, it's like moving in the wind, but there's something it's not green, it's black that's moving, and it looks big. And I'm right here, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And I look down, and it is my worst nightmare come true. It is the biggest snake you've ever seen in your life. I scream, I drop the club, I run away. Matt's like, what are you doing? I'm like, we gotta leave the state. He's like, I live here. I was like, well, you gotta move. You gotta burn your house. I don't know what to tell you. So we go through the rest of the course. I think we played 18, and my ADD kicks in around the 5th hole. And so that was like hole 4. So the rest of the course, I'm just like, I'm on edge. You're like just kind of on edge. You're like, everything that moves is trying to eat you. Well, we get done with golf, and I'm like, okay, cool. No big deal. Now, we're in San Antonio. I want to go see the Alamo because I've never seen it before. I want to go down and just I'm not a history buff. I'm like, that's cool. Let's go see something old. Well, we're walking. If you've never been in San Antonio, there's a river walk right in the middle of the city. And so we're walking down the river walk, and it's like this pretty river and like all these little outdoor shops and stuff like that, and like trees that are growing up. But there's like this sidewalk, and it's all manicured. It's like downtown, so they're taking care of it. It's not Riverside, whatever. So, well, there's this crowd of people that are gathered up around this bush or plant, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? Is there like some street art? Is I don't know what's going on. So I go over, and I'm like I'm not like touching them, but I'm like right up on them, and I'm like looking over the top, and it was another snake in downtown San Antonio. So I did what any appropriate human being would have done, I screamed like an 8-year-old girl and again tried to run away because this thing was attempting to eat me, right? This was like day 2 or 3 of the vacation. The rest of the vacation, I'm doing nothing but seeing snakes around every corner and just everything that I'm like just freaking out. This was supposed to be a time where I could like unplug and just unwind and just get away. And all I could do, I had been faced with a dilemma, and all I saw the rest of the time was dilemma. You ever realize it's interesting how when life becomes chaotic, we become confused? When we're faced with that chaotic moment, we start to kind of like get all out of sorts. When dilemma strikes, our focus becomes diluted. We hit a setback and it stops all of our forward progress. We find ourselves just being, watch me. We find ourselves in a moment where we should be locked in. We're just unwound because something has caused us to become shaken. Something has caused us to just be come undone. And that's kind of where we find ourselves today. And maybe it's not a snake while you're playing golf or in downtown San Antonio. Maybe it's a diagnosis that you received. Maybe it's a phone call that you got from somebody. Maybe it's an unanswered prayer. Or maybe it's a prayer that was answered just not in the way you wanted it to be answered. And so now you are struggling to get your bearings on what you should be doing going forward. That's really where we find ourselves in the passage that we're looking at today. Let me kind of set it up and story tell it for you real quick. We're in Luke's Gospel, chapter 24 today. And Jesus on Thursday night, he has gone to the Garden of Gethsemane to spend time in prayer, and then he's betrayed there in the evening and goes on this flurry and frenzy of a trial that goes kind of through the night and this interrogation. And there comes a moment on Friday morning where he's condemned to death. And then he goes from this mockery of a trial to now he's hanging on a cross, and he's there for a short period of time, and then all of a sudden he's dead. And they have to rush him off the cross, because then they have to get him in the tomb, because in their calendar timeline, this would be Passover weekend. It's the biggest weekend for them. And so they have to rush him off and get him in the tomb. And now he's in the tomb all of the rest of Friday and all the rest of Saturday, and Sunday morning shows up. And the stone gets rolled away, and women are there, and they're witnessing that Jesus, the tomb, he's not there. The tomb's empty. Is somebody taking him? Is he alive from the dead? What does all this mean? And the disciples are somewhat in a quandary. And in Luke chapter 24, it says that very same day, there's these two guys that are traveling from Jerusalem to Emmaus. It's a 7-mile journey, and they encounter Jesus, and they start to have this conversation with him, and he's asking them what's going on. Like, and they're like, have you not been on Twitter? Have you not been on, do you not have Wi-Fi to check your social, to check your Facebook? Like, Jesus of Nazareth has died, and now people are saying he's back, and here's what they actually tell him. They said, we thought he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. Now, if you look at this, just leave this right here. If you look at this passage of scripture, these were not part of the 12 disciples, but yet they were close enough that they watched miracles happening. They were there when teachings were going on, and they had been impacted by the ministry of Jesus, but they had encountered the intimacy of Jesus, where he spoke to the deep things on the inside of them, their purpose and their calling, and they had been this moment in some period of time over the course of at most 3.5 years, or at least one moment where they had been so locked in that now they are shaken in what's going on in life because they have struck the rock of dilemma. It's Jesus that we thought he was the Messiah. Like, we heard about him walking on the water, and we saw him open blind eyes, and we saw him. We were possibly there when he fed over 20,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. We see all, and we've heard all that he's done, and we thought he was the Messiah. But now tragedy has struck, and we feel scattered. You ever feel scattered? Emotionally, mentally, spiritually? You ever have tragedy strike and you're catching your bearings, looking or trying to navigate the moment, and you are at best struggling to hold on? Hear me. How do you keep disappointment from derailing you? Because that's what they've encountered. We thought he was the Messiah, and now we don't know what. You have had an encounter in your life, and disappointment is looming over you. How do you keep disappointment from throwing you off course? What do you do when the dust has settled and the honeymoon is over, and now it's like, this is wild? What do you do when the prayer is not answered in the way you wanted, or maybe it's not been answered at all yet? What do you do? What do you do when the job that you were hoping for, that feels like it's the answer to the prayer that you have, is given to someone else? What do you do when what you were anticipating, actually you see happen anticipating for good in your life, you see happen in someone else's, but you're still stuck in a moment of frustration? You're still stuck in like, hey, I wasn't praying that for them. I was praying that for me. And God, what are you doing? Where are you? How do you keep on going when pain has inserted itself into your life? How do you keep on going? Hear me. When trials and difficulties are knocking the wind out from you and pulling the rug out from underneath you, how do you keep on going? How do you not allow yourself to get derailed? How do you handle a moment when you find yourself living in a moment that life is a contradiction to your faith, where you're trying to stand on Psalm 61, from the ends of the earth will I cry when my heart is overwhelmed, but you are feeling more overwhelmed than you are feeling like you're actually standing, much less standing on the word? How do you, when you find yourself, Job 23, behold, I go forward and he's not there and behind me, and I can't perceive him into the left. I can't behold him into the right. I don't know what he's doing. And even though the rest of the verse says, but he knows the way that I take, and when he has tried me, I will come forth as pure gold. That's great, but I'm still stuck back here in my dilemma. I'm still stuck back here in my disappointment, trying to figure out, God, where are you? Maybe this isn't a story about 2 guys walking to Emmaus. Maybe this is more of a story about us, where we're finding this difficulty and struggling. And Psalms 46 says he's an ever-present help. But I am feeling lost, wondering when help is going to show up. Trials, let me read this to you. Trials and dilemmas strike, and it feels like purpose passes away, and the calling feels cluttered, and our desire to connect with God, watch, begins to grow cold. So we unknowingly begin to entertain religious routine and forfeit relationship because disappointment has knocked the wind out of us. And we still might attend, but our faith to move mountains has been overcome by cynicism. Here's what it really is. It's John 21. It's the same timeline, but the disciples are now encountering the same dilemma, the 12, and Peter looks at them and says, hey, let's go fishing. Peter was a professional fisherman. He had left his business to follow Jesus, and now dilemma has struck, and he says, you know what, let's just go back to what we used to do. I can't handle this, so let me go back to what I was comfortable with. You ever find yourself going back to what you're just comfortable with? And that's how you handle the pressure, the pain, and in this moment? They leave what they had known for 3.5 years, and they lose the intentionality of the relationship, and instead of pressing in, they discard everything and allow their passion to decay, their purpose to deteriorate. What they find themselves in is spiritual entropy. Entropy. It's the gradual decline into disorder. Fear hits, faith vacates, and we start to deteriorate. Struggle hits, trials hit, testing hits, dismay hits, dilemma hits, disappointment hits, and what happens? We have the opportunity in this moment to press into Him or allow our faith to become deteriorated. And I feel like there's a lot more times, often than not, that I find myself in this spiritual entropy where I am allowing my faith to wane. And regardless of the situation we're facing, we must live a life focused and connected to Jesus when we feel Him near and when we don't, because no matter what's going on, the resurrected Christ is with me even when I don't recognize it. These guys are walking with Jesus, and they did not realize it was Him. How many times has that happened to us? That He actually is near, but I am so focused on the dilemma, I am not cognizant of His nearness. I'm so focused on the moment that I'm unaware He's actually right beside me through it all. Here's what happens. If you chase Him and lean in, He will explain what's going on. What we see in the scripture in verse 25 through 27, Jesus said to them, how foolish you are and how slow to believe that all the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and enter into His glory? And then beginning with Moses and the prophets, He explained to them what was said all in the scriptures concerning Himself. They find themselves, they've reached Emmaus, and here's what Jesus starts to walk on. They reach their destination. He starts to walk past them, and they say, hey, will you please stay with us a while? Verse 28 through 32, as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if He was going farther. Verse 29 says, but they urged Him strongly, stay with us, for it is evening, and the day is almost over. So He went in to stay with them. Here's the question. How do I keep focus when life has derailed me? I look for the patterns that I find Him always operating in, and they bring me back to a course correction where I recognize He's actually close by. Verse 30 through 32, as they sat down to eat, He took a small loaf of bread, asked God's blessing on it. He broke it, and then He gave it to them. And suddenly their eyes were opened, and they asked each other, were not our hearts burning within us as He talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us. They intentionally made a moment with him that brought clarity to the middle of their despair. Hear me, hear me. They let the dust settle, and they allowed a moment intentionally. They focused in, and when he began to operate in a pattern that they were familiar with, it brought clarity back to them. They were able to see it. They were able to see him as he really was. Hear me. Hear me. The band's going to come up here and we're landing the plane. Don't take crushing in your life as the absence of God. 2 Corinthians 4, 8-9, we are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. We are not perplexed. We're not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. Don't take a failure. Don't take trial as the absence of God, because James 1:12 says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. Don't take failure as the absence, failure in your life as the absence of God, that he's not there. Psalms 72 says, nevertheless, God says, I am continually with you. You hold my right hand. My flesh and heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. How do I keep focused when life has derailed me? I look back to when he showed up here. And I feel like this is like a theme of my life. I'm constantly having to go back to reminding myself of how he showed up. He showed up here, and then he showed up here, and then he showed up here. And so when I don't know what's going to happen here, I just look back at here, and here, and here. And it lets me know I may not know how it's going to work out. I may not know when it's going to work out. I just know that it's going to work out. Let me leave you with this. Don't allow disappointment to become your destiny. Don't allow your dilemma to dilute your focus. Don't allow your drama to distract your purpose. It's true. He's an ever-present help. I just have to find moments where I kind of like knock the cloudiness away. I knock the worry away. I knock the anxiety. I'm not saying the anxiety's not real. I'm not saying the worry's not real. I'm just saying I make him more real than the moment I'm going through. I find myself going back to a moment where I'm just saying, hey God, take my life. You can have it. You can have what I thought this was supposed to be, but it's feeling like that's not what it's going to be, but you can have it. You can shape me and mold me. You can shape this moment and mold this moment. It's not what I don't really like the moment, but I give you me inside the moment. Take my life. Take my life. You can have it all.
So glad you decided to be with us today. At Salem, we are intent on creating community centered on Christ. The best way you can connect in our community is by using the digital Connect card to ask questions or get info on anything happening here at Salem. If we don't see you in person next week, we'll see you right back here on our online campus.